as also my introduction to Agile. I'm one of those weird people that went, I'm kind of a process metrics nut. I love that kind of stuff. But my first mentor was an industrial engineer. So he and I kind of reinvented Kanban without knowing that it was happening already. There was about a lot of literature out there. So when I finally found it, I was just taking it real quickly. But my job description for about 9 months was help Luke with whatever he needs for the transformation and learn to be him so that we have you when he leaves. So that's the closest approximation I can give you to what my job is at Rackspace. I'm the resident Luke. I don't know that I do it really well, but...
Without the spastic nature.
You don't think I'm spastic enough to be Luke?
I mean, you need to work on that.
All right, I'll try and be a little bit more spastic. All right, so Rackspace is primarily a hosting company. Is everybody familiar? Okay. I don't want to go too fast or slow. I do tend to speak pretty fast. Please feel free to hurl mints or jars at me if you need to get my attention or if I go too fast. Or if I go too slow. And do please interrupt me with questions or whatever you guys have that you want to do, because I tend to work a lot better with interaction anyway. So you'd be doing me a favor. Rackspace is in transition right now from a hosting company to a software company, primarily software company. It is now actually officially the Open Cloud company, and is the founding member of OpenStack, which is the open source, basically the Linux of cloud, for those of you that are familiar with it or care. That's the OpenStack website, which basically tells you kind of what it is, what you do. A lot of these slides that I've put in here, some of them are kind of wordy. I wanted you to have them for your reference. I need to go back to them, but I won't talk about them. Like this one, for example. But this is basically what the original initiative was at Rackspace to start playing innovation games. It was a deliberate effort. Mark Durante is the VP of Cloud, now VP of Product at Rackspace. And he brought innovation games with him. He knew Luke and worked with him at Yahoo, and from some earlier work with HP and things like that. So he came to Rackspace sort of with a plan that we were going to do Agile Transformation, that we were going to do innovation games, a couple of other sort of meta processes that he considers as well. So he considers these basically toolkits, ways to think that allow you to free up your mind for the actual problem solving rather than problem solving about problem solving. So, since even with a case study, I really hate just talking all of the time, I wanted to force you guys to say something anyway. So, if you were in our position, if you were in Mark's position, you say, okay, I know innovation games. I know how to play. I know what kind of power they have. I'm now in a position of power at a large company that is very collaborative, has a culture of play that would ideally adopt this really well. What would you do? What would you try to do? What do you?
Maybe I would think about the basic kind of processes or basic kind of activities, and I would try to implement in these activities and measure the improvement and probably modify these activities and provide new games.
So sort of
continuous cycle of evolvement of the way activities are being handled.
So you do like a business model and then
Covering the activities for the organization.
And to add to that, I think you need an army of people behind you that support what you're doing. So, I think it's Mark, or the VP of product, he could go to a group of managers or team leaders in a specific area and say, we're going to play these games, we're going to get you advocates of these games to kind of trickle down to the rest of the organization.
So that we've been in this model of these activities which are created. These activities are like the requirement for
would somehow communicate the results.
What about, like, really basic stuff? Nobody else at Rackspace does it. Actually, rollouts, applications, those sorts of things. So here's what we do. This is sort of a review. So Rackspace actually had a history with gaming and serious games, not innovation games, but with just gaming in general, prior to Mark and Luke. So there was a little bit of a grounding right there. You guys familiar with ThoughtWorks? Right. Okay. So ThoughtWorks was a contractor, has been off and on contractor with Rackspace for a long time. And they had come in fact, Will was part of this group at one point in time, where they came in and did a couple of rapid spin-up projects. We called them quick starts. And they actually played a couple of games. Speedboat was one of them. And a couple others. GameStorming was a sort of thing. So there were several people that were introduced to serious games and GameStorming and sort of picked up on that sort of approach to problem solving in the first place. Some of them, or at least one of them, so much so that she actually came up with her own training pattern in order to try and replicate and simulate what had been done with ThoughtWorks, Lillian, and she actually trained practice people. Now that eventually, as Rackspace reorged and people moved into different positions and things like that, that started to kind of die away. But there was sort of this idea, and some of these people end up cropping up again as advocates later on when we start doing the actual innovation games. So, September, this is all timeline stuff, just to give you the history. It's kind of case study. And I build on the rest of the stuff. So, Mark joined us in 2010, and what I've got over here is my nice little infection map. I came up with this sort of metaphor based off of the way I kind of saw the propagation going through the organization. We have a traditional org tree, and it was starting to get slightly overrun. Where trained facilitators were starting to play games and things like that. So I wanted to be able to replicate that experience for a little bit. So that's, as I go along, that's kind of what I'm creating here. So I told you most about this kind of stuff. So Mark brought with him a couple of his other cohorts. Harry was one of them, was the expert. And Harry's also trained an Innovation Games Facilitator. So is. So at that point in time, just by hiring them, we've got 2 trained facilitators already. We're on our way. So come December of that same year, that's when I was telling you, that's how I met Luke. Luke joins on contract with Rackspace through his other company, Enthiosys, that does Agile Transformations and things like that. That's how we meet. When Enthiosys first starts their activities, they don't just start with a rollout. They'll come in and do an organizational retrospective, probably similar to some human approaches. Probably come in and do some kind of assessment before you just assume that at all. It's same kind of a thing, but he runs them as regular retrospectives. It's organizational retrospectives. How does your organization do? How do you perceive things like that? And he runs them primarily with innovation games. That's what he expects to do. As a result of this, we already have, right off the bat, about 100 rappers who have played some form of game. They don't necessarily know that they're innovation games yet, but they've played Speedboat, they've played 2020, probably seen the product tree by this point in time. If they don't, they see it in class. So they're starting to see this game philosophy already, and actually it's one of the things that makes the retrospective so successful, is the idea that we went through it with a gaming structure in mind. And he actually does run the entire retrospective over a couple of months, exactly as the work starts. Comes back with results from Mark, and they actually can build in 20 slides. January of the next year through April, we start doing Agile roll, the exciting ones from. So everybody had to do Scrum training, and then Luke has a whole section of product training that he also brings us up on, because that's areas we week at a time. That entire training has some limited forms of innovation games in it. There's a couple of slides, and it doesn't take over the entire thing. There's a couple of slides in there talk about the product tree, talk about by feature, things like that. So there's already a little bit of sort of insertion of the ideas into people, even before they really know. They see innovation games on the slides, sort of a footnote, but that's about it. So there are 300 people in that organization. All of them had to take the training. So every single one of them at this point in time has at least seen the concept of point product training by feature. The idea that you can use these games for your stuff.
So, I mean, what it means by a feature, what were the meaning and context of the existing?
So product tree and by feature weren't played during the training. They were just taught and talked about. The context in which they were taught was as a product owner, if you were running Scrum, you could actually go to your customers and you could run a roadmap with product tree. You could actually talk about the analogy of software. I don't know if he's done this, how many of these he's done with you, but during the training we talked about the analogy of the tree as a better metaphor for software development than architecture, because architecture is stagnant and software grows over time, like organism. And that's kind of the metaphor that we used, and that's kind of how it was introduced. But they didn't actually play during the training. There just wasn't time. It was mostly, this section of the training over a 2-day course took maybe 15 minutes just to introduce them to the idea that this was something, this was another form of customer feedback. By feature was the same way. You saw this pricing structures and how you would price the individual items and things like that, and how people would play. It was a description of those ways. So in retrospectives, it was all gameplay. Okay, so out of this, there's enough movement and enough activity, but we've got 2 rackers that go out to San Jose to actually get training. These are the first 2 rackers that actually go to an Innovation Games training. They were rackers previously. I'm one of them. The other one was completely serendipitous, which is one of the things that I think is interesting about part of this transformation. Is at this point in time, enough of a critical mass has been reached in just a simple number of people that have been exposed to the games that word is getting out. This guy just happened to hear through the rumor mill that there was some gameplay, interesting stuff going on over in Cloud, decided to check it out, saw it on the website, and talked to his manager about it, and just happened to sign up for the same class that I went to. Luke actually asked me at the training, "Oh, hey, do you know this other guy? He's, did you bring him? Where does he work?" And I have no idea who you're talking about. I've never met this guy before in my life. But that's, I mean, so already we're starting to see just from that sort of insertion. Nobody's been trained yet, except for the 2 of us. Just a sort of slow insertion that word is getting out. So obviously doing something. And we've doubled our Innovation Games Trained Facilitator. Number of people from 2 to 4. Wow, it's like 200%. We're doing awesome. Alright, so this one doesn't actually grow the organization as much, but this is where, to your point, there's a stronger refresher on the product group to actually run a prune product tree and use it as a road mapping activity. This is a half-day activity where he actually runs product tree. He doesn't run it with customers, he runs it with the product owners, the architects, and he tries to get marketing in there, that's something important. So that we had good representation for generating a roadmap. And just have them play product tree ad hoc on their product. We had them bring whatever kind of road mapping documentation they already had, if any, and just said, imagine this is more features up through additional features. You can swim lane them out onto branches as they branch out into feature sets or things like that. Architecture down at the bottom, the things that support the tree. He emphasizes a lot the idea that your architecture is like the roots of the system, which is why your architect has to be there. So just like a tree, software without a good foundation will fall over with too many features. And he says, he introduces this to them, and they pick up on it as a way to emphasize the importance of technical debt stories. I find there's a lot of this that's agile in nature because that's kind of how we were introduced to it. For those who are not agilists, if you start using terminology that you're not familiar with, feel free to pull things out. Whatever you need to do to get my attention, and I'll stop people through it. Or we can talk about it after. Okay, so this gets us up one level up above Mark at this point in time, and off into another work structure already. Now, during this time, Mark is also having conversations with his folks, right? And he's talking about different ways to solve problems and how to institute processes without really hammering them down. Rackspace is a very empowered culture. The developers have no qualms about telling their managers when they're doing something that is not appropriate to Rackspace culture. So,
Nicely put.
thank you. I had to filter that one for a minute. That's actually the thing I'm most worried about during this presentation. For those of you I haven't talked to yet, this is actually my first presentation. So. And at the first ever Innovation Games Summit. Coincidence? I think not.
He's not showing it at least, right?
Yes, inside I'm deeply quivering. But, thank you. Anyway. Next discussion. Oh yeah, so he's having discussions well with his peers, things like that, right? So, now he's ready to actually do the training. He's ready to actually bring the bulk of his product group, especially the product managers and a couple of other key personnel, into a training session. Since I've already been through one, I end up helping out to facilitate. If anybody heard me asking questions at the Innovation Games training, that was why I was like, this is how I ended up going to 4 classes. That's right, I went to one and helped out with 3 more. So this group gets trained. These are all my additional facilitators. We have another 21 in Mark's organization. And the supply chain group also gets trained. Mark had a conversation with them. He runs his group, not necessarily by I need innovation and all that kind of stuff. It was more, I want to understand my customer, what's his real driving need, and he's also just naturally predisposed to putting these guys through training. He wants to expose them to stuff. So he's just, hey, let's go to a training, try it out, see what happens. So we got kind of a twofer for Luke to come out and do 2 classes. I didn't see the contract, but anyway. And now we've got, in order to actually map all of the exposure that we have at Rackspace, we have to go all the way up to the CDA. These trainings were so popular that people came out of that training from this group and with this group wanting to help each other. Like, if you've got a game, if you need to run a game and you need some help, let me know. I'll come over. I'll take time off of my job to come over and help you with your game. By demand, we set up a email group and a chatter group. Chat, for those who don't know, chatter is kind of like a corporate Twitter, intern Twitter. So this is really looking good, right? We're really taking. It seems like we're really taking. Is anybody starting to catch that? Okay, so we start. We're rolling into the time where Luke is really kind of starting to lead the group. We bring him back every so often, but his contract for Agile is ended at this point in time, as long as it's ended at this point in time. These are where games, like actual gameplay stuff, really cropping up. Because at this point in time, we have a whole lot of training. We don't have any really big metrics around it, but we don't necessarily have a lot of untoward games going on.
And tell me, how long was Luke at Rackspace for during training? Was it just a couple days to train all the people on the outside?
It was actually, this group was a 2-day training, and then this group was a 2-day training immediately afterwards. So he was there for a week, basically, and we set it up so that it was Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday.
Are the enrollment part of the product organization or two different organizations?
Products and overloaded terminals. So this is at that time, it was called the Cloud Product Board, and was one of many groups in Rackspace, but this one was the one responsible at that time for producing the open source cloud product for basically all software. This was the software domain, and we've got finance and support and technical support and managed hosting and all that other kind of stuff. It doesn't require all software necessarily. This is the supply chain. What they actually managed was literal hardware supply chain management, so like traditional manufacturing ideas of lean and things like that, trying to get just in time, all that kind of stuff. That's their
What kind of game they do?
This was not so much for their day-to-day structure, they knew how to handle that. What they wanted to be able to do was understand the customer's desire in the first place. So they're doing customer solicitation kind of products, they're playing products, they're playing maybe bringing out those sorts of things.
Thank you so much. That's great. Thank you.
So, so these, we start cropping up in areas where my role actually changes around this point in time. We go through another year. And, yeah, Bill laughs. Talk to me after if you want to. Rackspace has kind of a reputation for reorging frequently. I understand small companies. Rackspace I describe as the largest startup in the world. It still has, it's 5,000 people that still have that startup mentality. So there's a lot of great things that come with that. That's almost a source of financial support. There's some challenges. 5,000 person So, and one of the artifacts of that is that we value people a lot. So whenever we reorg, it's to try and help those connections. But it's, okay, let's try this and see if that works. It's very experimental. Let's try this and see if that works. Let's try this and see if that works. So you can, if you work for Rackspace, you can expect to go through some kind of reorg. What is it? 6 months to a year, right?
Well, yeah, and you can expect to move your desk quite.
Oh yeah, at least, although I actually think I hold the record for the ratio. I actually have had more bosses than I have desks. But I had 3 of them in my first 2 weeks. And none of them were bad situations or anything like that. They all liked me, I liked all of them. It was just swapped around. Oh, let's try this one. Let's try this one. Oh, wait, you want to do this kind of thing. You direct your career a lot at Rackspace. And that has an impact on your structure. So anyway, so now I'm here. Actually, one of the reasons I'm down here is because I've gone through this whole Agile Transformation where I'm an Agile Coach, and I'm telling people how they're supposed to, and giving them advice on how to run Scrum, and I've never actually done it. So I feel kind of like a hypocrite. So I sort of finagle and work myself into an actual Scrum Master position. So this is me down here. Then there's another group up here that starts to be really active in the games, just as a group in general. And then there's a couple of games that are going on over here. So you see, now we've got all the trainings, we're starting to see these games starting to pop up, right? It's starting to look good. Another one I could not let go of, kind of an outlier, but it's really emblematic, one that I wanted to point out. Yet another person that just sort of hears through the grapevine what's going on. Way over here, still under this branch, still doing some product work, actually out in the OpenStack. So Rackspace manages OpenStack as a separate wing for legal reasons that allows OpenStack to truly be open and to be a collaboration among lots and lots of different competitors without the conflict of interest in Rackspace itself. So all of these guys are developing products for Rackspace. All of these guys are developing products for OpenStack. And Rackspace actually pays these guys just to contribute to OpenStack. They don't make products for Rackspace. That's why they're a separate partner. Anyway, it's also why we didn't have a whole lot of visibility into exactly what they were doing. But they see kind of what's going on over here. Right? So this guy just hears about Innovation Games, hears about what we're doing, maybe sees a couple of people talk about it, or things like that, looks it up online, is interested, calls up the number they have online, talks to Tammy for like 15, 20 minutes. She gives him a crash course in speedboat. And he decides that's cool enough that he's going to go straight from that 20-minute conversation into an OpenStack summit and run a speedboat with customers there. I found out about this because we were helping with switching their organization into a more structured Scrum. So we were helping them with some backlog and road mapping. He walks into the meeting with a actual, right off the website, formally printed sailboat, the speedboat, the motorboat, with literal post-its from customers written on them. Where did you learn to do this? I just called Tammy, we talked, it was great, we loved it. Cool. So it almost seems like it's happening on its own. So at this point in time, my boss at the time and I start doing, because I had this background in coaching, he was a coach, and he deliberately pickles me back a little bit on my commitments here so I can go off and help other parts of the organization. He and I will start helping other parts of the organization with Agile Transformations. And we do this a couple of times and start to get a pattern that we feel is pretty good. That pattern includes a number of the games. So other people in the organization start just playing these games as a matter of course, because that's how we teach them that they're supposed to go from vision to backlog. Do you guys want me to walk through real quick exactly how we do that? Okay.
That'd be great.
So the way that, are there any non-Agilists? 1, 2, okay. Stories are a form of requirements. Story storming is a way of gathering a whole bunch of requirements up on a wall real quick and collating them in some way. Themes or groups of those stories. Okay. So, first thing we start doing is just talking to them to determine exactly where they are in the process. There's one group we did not play product box with because they came in with a spreadsheet of 400 requirements. So, okay, fine. And they were like, they were customer feedback notes, basically. One of their requirements was must be awesome.
Great.
That was one of my favorites. We skipped product box. We went straight to theme, story storming and theme. We got them all up on the boards and started having a group. Then there's a couple other groups that were like, okay, we have a product. We've talked and we feel like we know what we're doing, but I can't tell you what we're doing. I can't articulate it. We don't necessarily have exactly the same vision. Meet me next week here. They come in and run product box. sell me the box, build and sell me the box that whatever it is that you're selling comes in. Whatever it is. You guys figure it out. Whatever your customer is going to consume from you comes in this box. Build it and then sell it back to me. And it usually helps them really cohere their vision. I've gotten a couple of feedbacks that it actually helps build a team as well. We have a tweak that we use for it because who here runs, am I the only one here that runs games internally? Does anybody else work in, okay, other internals? Sweet, okay. Okay, here's how we did it. I'd love any feedback that you guys have on how to tweak the games for internal use. Because we can't count on the idea, or at least at Rackspace, we can't count on the idea that we're going to have readers, and observers, especially observers. We can't count on the idea that we're going to have all the things that you would have if you really produced them. Right? Most of our games happen either in a week or ad hoc, like that. I'll talk about that later. Anyway, so I bring them into Product Box. The tweak that I have is if we're a group for Product Box, you guys are just watching while I'm presenting my box. Congratulations, you're now observers. Until you present. Now I'm an observer and I'm an observer. So we're all taking notes while you're presenting. And it also becomes a form of story storming in our particular case, because I'm particularly interested not just in what you hear that person say, but whatever that person says makes you think is cool. And then you write that stuff down. All that stuff, for some of you guys know this already, for story storming, all that stuff goes up on a wall. Then we do silent sort, for those who know what that is. They're not allowed to talk, but they can move each other's cards, and they just have to start grouping. These things go together. Then I take the chunks, move them down on the wall, draw 2 lines. Say, okay, do you have to have this right away? It's like a loose form between you have to have this right away. You have to have this soon. If they have a hard time with the abstractions, 30, 60, 90, or first release, next release, or so on and so forth. But high, medium, low. Near, midterm, far. So now each group already has a high-level polarization, high-level group polarization. All the highs come off of all the themes. We come over to another section of the wall and we play 2020. 2020 is really kind of taken off for this particular one. The question, if you can only have one, tends to be really powerful, at least in Rackspace. Oh, I thought you were
I'll go with this.
okay. Well, I told you you can throw stuff at me. You were really looking forward to that, too. Tends to be really powerful, especially for people who are used to having 15 people on priorities. Although I have made a couple of these metaphors. So that's the 2020. Now we actually have a stack rank backlog. It's just moved. And then we walk them through kind of story. It makes it a good story, ready for developers to use. The product tree we play loosely. If they can throw their stuff up on the wall and theme it okay, we don't need it. If they're still having problems with that, or if the product box did not produce a lot of cards, then we'll start doing a tree formation. We'll start saying, okay, so what are the core features? What is it going to build into? Things like that. Then thinking through it linearly rather than as a block. Structured block will also help. So if we play all three, it's product box feeds product tree, which feeds 2020. And then high, medium, low turns into a product tree feeds that. Cool? Awesome. So that's kind of how that works. All right. So this process, we end up actually just recently starting to formalize. It so happened that there's a guy out in San Antonio who recently got a grant with a community educational grant to create a sort of fast track college program for getting into software development, and he's partnered with Rackspace. So what we get out of it is we get tailored pipeline developers to our process, and to our development, what we want. And what he gets out of it is our feedback and basically an alpha site for testing this out. What's significant about this is that Eric and I and some of the rest of the team is helping to teach that class. We're teaching exactly what we did, and we're including those games. We're also doing a speed run at the end, which is a retrospective on the class itself. So that's going to be part of the class that will be taught throughout Rackspace, and also will be taken, if this class becomes a little bit more formal, out of Rackspace into other college-like programs. And it's like, again, it's not Innovation Games training, it's Innovation Games in context, and as a solution for something. Okay. So all of this is going on. At the same time, Mark's still having these conversations with his peers, and all of these other activities are going on. And we get two more sections of the organization, here and here, that decide they want training too. So they bring Luke back. I find out that this has happened, not because anybody's told me to start talking to Innovation Games. I get calls from this guy's and this guy's secretary that says, Luke said you know how to prep for one of these games. I've got a really long list of supplies, and I'm not sure what to do. So I'm now the point man for figuring out how to prep for Luke at Rackspace. And he's not here for me. Anyway. But that's, so these are two additional groups as part of our foundations group. They're like IT, this one's. It's IT for IT, so they do and this one is, who are these guys? Oh, operational excellence. So these guys are more similar to these guys. These are actually our industrial engineering. So these are Lean Six Sigma kind of guys. And they're actually a service for the rest of Rackspace processes. They're much older than Rackspace doing software. So they would go into, Kanban processing for service tickets, or for supply chain management, or their job was to help improve processes, just in general, not software specific. So they start picking it up as basically a part of their grab bag, part of their toolkit. And this particular group, the operational excellence group, becomes particularly interesting. At this point in time, and these numbers are not meant to be exactly the right numbers. I did not attend the full sessions for both of these. I didn't get the attendance list, so I don't know exact numbers. But at this point in time, we're going to get probably over 100 training facilitators out of 5,000 person country, which is not insignificant. Also around this time frame, Rackspace signs up for an enterprise license for Innovation Games Trained. And Will's actually run on by feature. So let's see how we did. So would you say we got our new supporters? We think it's likely that we got good communicated results. Not necessarily, really, because we don't know all the conversations. So maybe we do. Do you think we got training covered?
Yep.
What about yours?
Yeah.
You think we did that?
Yeah, he said the all activities were done. We did activity.
But you did add the chatter groups and some of the other things, so there is definitely
So there's some infrastructure as well.
from the communication
Oh,
standpoint.
yeah, the communication. So not necessarily up, but around at least. So we at least did partially on that, right?
It should have tribal knowledge communication.
You're not allowed to answer. You know the
Well,
answers.
Well, yeah, but we're doing a retrospective, so he knows what went on.
No, the retrospective.
I know.
I'm teasing. Go ahead. What did you miss?
well, and a lot of it was organic, right? People
Yes.
kept popping up there.
And that's why I included sort of the initial Will and Karen's not here. Or to the sort of the original instigators that are now part of our go-to team, part of the people that, you know, if they have questions at Rackspace, one of our names gets floated.
I'm interested in comments about it being organic. What kinds of pains were driving people to Rackspace?
Rackspace, did you want to?
I was just going to say, it's not necessarily a pain. It's one of those things at Rackspace where people hear about things through the grapevine. It's very, just to give you a description, our corporate headquarters, we recently moved to a former dead shopping mall. Okay, so we have this 2-level mall. Picture that's been built out in the office space, so all the storefronts have been gutted and everything like that. We do have something really fun. We have a slide that you can slide from the second level to the first level.
Cool.
It takes you to the coffee bar.
If you survive it, it takes you to the coffee bar. But, so it's a very open, collaborative kind of environment. People just walk through the mall, and be talking to somebody. Oh, what are you doing now? Because I haven't seen you in a while.
Yeah.
You know, because this place is bigger now.
Because people also set their own destinies a lot there, and because we work a lot, you get to know a lot of people at Rackspace quick. So there's a lot of that informal communication that just happens organically. Additionally, like we said, it is a culture that will try just about anything just to see if it works. There's a market answer for that, the innovators, the early adopters. There's a lot of early adopters in Rackspace. So, and it's not just about technology, too. They'll try it out. And Innovation Games is one of those things that if you try it out in the right circumstances, you'll never want to let it go. If you try it out in the wrong circumstances, then you want to actually do it.
Tony mentioned the online game that I ran it for. We're in the midst of picking a new chat vendor. We had this huge list of requirements from all across the company, all the different pockets that were involved with this process. And it just, the list was massive. But there was no real understanding between the teams of each other's needs for why they were asking for what they were asking for. So I ran an online via features. We have distributed teams in like UK and Hong Kong and different places. And it worked out really well because it gave everybody that collaborative atmosphere to be able to talk about stuff, understand each other's needs. We came up with a really good prioritized list. Because you don't want to hit a vendor who's coming in to do a demo for you with a list of 400 things. You want to give them the top 20 and say, show me this, fit it to my model. So it was pretty effective. And I still get feedback from that saying, yeah, we should do another one of those. That was like out of the blue and cool and whatever. So,
You were able to find a vendor that everybody
yeah.
Roger.
And then, we go out with this.
Yeah.
That's another story.
So, in your inspection map, you had one person who, from marketing, who kind of was one of the very first trained, and one of the areas that I don't see exploding
Is this area.
is this area, so my
Very,
question.
very observant of you. So there's a story that goes along with that.
Okay.
And it comes a little later, just like I've been talking about it now since you brought it up. He came, like you said, he went to the same training that I did. He came back and ran a couple of games, ran 2 games, total 2 games with his group, his internal group. They ran Real Product Tree and, Product Box, I'm sorry, Product Box and Speedboat. And they ran both of them on a project that had run for a little while, so everybody had already kind of had a good understanding of what they were doing. Everybody enjoyed the game. They thought it was fun. It was a team building activity. The feedback that came back from it, because the point we were in the project, was we didn't really learn anything we didn't already know. So
They've never taken it out to the actual customer.
nor have they ever used it in a domain where they didn't already know users. So that's why I caveated my answer was if you use them in a case where you're really satisfying that need, you latch onto it. Okay? this looks like a really good one, right? Get an executive promoter, somebody who really goes out there and talks to people, have a bunch of classes, right? So you may see the fly in there. I've stared at this so long I couldn't tell it was on this. It wasn't obvious to me until
Well, that you actually need to create another role or position for someone to manage that, because you can't be doing
that
your
actually
job.
has been a pain point for us. Because there's those of us, it's been sort of like volunteer organizations, those of us that can really give it to, but it's all on our own time kind of stuff, so that's really fun.
The kind of formulas in the first two questions, what is the problem you're trying to solve? What are you doing? So what are you doing?
You're close. So if I take this map, it's much, much sparser. This is a map of who knows about it, who's been trained or who's experienced them. All of these dots are people who played a game or two, right? These are the guys that are playing big. These are the guys that are playing a couple times. None of this blue is persisting. It happened, it was a flash, everybody thought it was cool, but there was no wow. That's what persisted at that point in time. We got a group up here, a couple of people like the little learners that, you know, playing with their teams. This team, which is a high success team for innovation, I mean, they use it daily. And then these groups still see, and they're running actually with customers. So they'll see success with it, but they run it, you know, okay. So happy. I'm kind of roundabout way to get there, but I'll give you guys a little bit. So that email chain, everybody was so excited about it, right? Well, everybody was excited about it because they wanted to talk. Everybody wanted to offer to run a game. Nobody came to the group and said, I have a need. Everybody just wanted to do it. Everybody wanted to help. Everybody wanted to support. But that cognitive magic that happens, that Luke tries to teach during the games, that says, I have this business need and I should play this game to solve it, wasn't happening. Everybody knew how to play the game. If they could make that leap at the right time, there'd be a lot more games made. But that wasn't happening. This email list saw in a year and a half, two emails. One was the email I sent out when I set it up, welcoming everybody to the group. And the other one was from Luke himself, because we included him on announcing that we had gotten the enterprise license for Innovation Games. That's it. Nobody with questions, nobody coming up with, I have this need, you got somebody interacting with me from this, or I have this problem with this customer, no questions. Nothing sparked conversation. So we also had the chatter group, right? That saw a little bit more success. A total of 45 members, which was about the number of people, not total, but about the number of people that went to those first two classes. Right? So everybody signed up right away and we just kind of stayed on there. Had a total of 18 messages in 6 months. And for the last 6 months, of those 18 messages, only 7 people actually wrote anything. And of those 18 messages, about half of them were written by me personally. Most of those messages comprise of things like, here's a neat article, or here's something that I found, here's some innovation games out in the industry, or here's, you know, hey, there's all of this, hey, this is nice kind of conversation. Still nobody coming in with, I have a need, I have a question. There was one question sent out, and it was a survey to see who was using the games. And I went to try and get that data for this paper. Apparently I was the only one. So she said I already had the data because I was the only one that gave her data. So There's another sort of poignant comparison, and this is outside of the group that you already pointed out. This is just within a particular part of the organization. There's one side, like there's one section of the house that's really taken off, and it's using them internally as a part of their daily structure. They don't think of it as using innovation games. They think it's just doing work. And it's not just innovation games. They use desired outcome frameworks. They use business process mapping. They use what else? You know who I'm talking about, so.
Just like.
Oh yeah. Good question. We're gonna get to that actually.
All right.
We're gonna get to that because that was my question too. It's like, well, that doesn't freaking help me. How am I supposed to replicate my meeting? I've also had people ask me along those same lines. Can you teach people the Jedi mind tricks you use? I don't know. What Jedi mind tricks are you referring to? What really frustrated me though is I went and I actually interviewed the leader of those groups for this. And both of them, I asked them point blank, you know, this group is using them a lot. This group is not. I asked both of them this. What's the difference? What are you guys doing differently? And they both told me, I think innovation games are great. They're good tools to solve specific problems. I don't explicitly promote them. I've got nothing but good feedback about them. Great. I've got nearly identical answers for my difference. There's a little bit of the seeds of the difference here. Here, you see, he starts talking a little bit about, well, we have a lot of turnovers, and I don't know games anymore, and we're spending a lot of time sort of in the new, because of this transition into software as a service, it's kind of a new idea for the product managers. They're still trying to get their idea around the product itself, and there's a learning curve associated with that. Commission meetings don't learn. They learn about your customer. They don't help you learn about the industry. And that was really that. So it wasn't with the need that they had at that time. And we didn't even recognize that. Over on this side, they actually had a learning center. It was thinking about how to propagate thinking. We see that a lot more here, but I actually found somebody who worked in the board a lot. These are the primary differences. This is the basic difference. I told her about the two interviews like I just did too. And I said, I don't know how to reconcile this. I don't know how to figure out what the main differences. And she just kind of sat back and said, I can tell what the difference is. Oh, really? This group, the success group, as part of their daily structure, thinks about how they solve problems. Not just what the problems are and what those solutions are, but how they get at those solutions so that they can problem solve better. They retrospect and introspect on problem solving itself. And that seems to be the fundamental difference that we find between the two. There are a lot of additional ones that are a little more obvious. One group had more confidence running than the other. One group was a little more customer facing than the other. So there are nudges in those directions. But this seems to be the big one. I had to include this one. I didn't have to include this one else. But that was another one of our sort of, this actually came from the group we were talking about. Went off to the edge. I asked him, well, why haven't you tried again? Right? What else is going on? When, you know, it's been a long time. Another shot. This was his response. And I didn't have anything to say. So product marketing is like primary that you should be using this kind of stuff. But I didn't have a response after that, so I stopped.
Is there, people call it upstream and downstream.
Could be. I'm not a marketing expert by any stretch of the imagination, so I understand that this is supposed to be the case, but you're entirely correct. He may be doing a lot of what qualitative downstream.
Downstream is the jingle, upstream is the font.
Okay, that's entirely possible. And that, actually, I'm glad you said that, because that may make this make a lot more sense.
And I shouldn't say jingle. But, you know,
Okay.
whatever.
They're catchy.
Hard to remember them.
Yeah, that would take a real commentary jingle.
Could you go back a couple of slides? Where the comments were? The second one, no, that one, that was right. Okay, the one that says, spend a lot of time, blah, blah, blah. It says, this isn't packaged software. This on-demand software, which is a new area for us, and I'm thinking, these people work at Rackspace.
Ooh, okay.
I mean, to me, that was a huge red flag.
Actually, yes, to some extent it is. And in fact, we hired a lot into that position. But this actually is a true statement. Rackspace's history is in operations and support, not in software. Rackspace has been in the software game for a year and a half, 2 years, and we just kind of grew into it. It depends on when you count when you start, right? If you count all the way back to the Moso days when we started doing sites and stuff like that, 2-3 years. If you're only counting the OpenStack years,
Here's my point.
okay.
That's great. Yeah.
Mhm.
I've gotten to know you guys, all of you guys, as an alternative to AWS.
Mhm.
Right? I don't care if that's the years or whatever, that's what you're doing.
Oh yeah,
So I say understand that from the outside looking in. That's what you're doing in the farm.
oh yeah,
So
oh yeah. We've changed the company name based
So
on that.
this to me is a red flag that you would put in front of the CEO and said, Houston, we got a problem.
It is, it was, and is also the result of some of the turnover that you mentioned that we had in the organization. We hired a lot so that we could get that expertise. Yes?
Well, the right of the, so you can see that energy fund to the use as microbes. Is there anybody told you to, I mean, isn't wrong? I mean, you have these relationships and say, well, this is not the most important thing that we can do as a company, why don't you do
Yes.
your job?
Yes, I was told that once. I was told that once by one person, and even with the reputation that I have at Rackspace. And at that time, I was very thankful that Rackspace has a culture where you can develop that culture.
But that's a cultural thing, and so, one of the things is resistance to provide resources to get this work done. Go to the next slide.
Fill that slide out, right? Thinking about some of the other points that you make, it becomes kind of evident in my own experience with the game, is the adoption curve is based on the evolutionary shift in the thinking of the adoption itself. So when you said, I'm working on in product marketing, so I have really had the time, and of your two groups, it becomes the mindset at some sort of leadership level of how we continue to achieve. If you embrace Agile and embrace Scrum, this is no different. It's just another part of the tool suite. And the real thing is, how do we solve problems, build product, and help our customers succeed? And it's the shifting in that mindset that one group has a factor to figure it out versus the other. That's the one that, looking at what you're sharing with us, that's what the one group has done it. And it's one of the things that we all need to embrace when we want to try and bring this in-house. The games are neat in the initial phase of it. The productivity is in the long run. Repetitive use is a part of the process that makes better outcomes.
The other thing I want you to consider is playing games with the school as opposed to then people is putting on this thing.
Yes, but you need to make sure that you have to do that associated with the business need that requires them to be there. And for certain parts of the business, you're starting to really stretch and fabricate the business need. And then you've made the game move on. So, yes, I absolutely do.
There's a thought cross one mind, I don't know if it will work or not, but you take the group that's not using it, and you talk about how can we improve our productivity and use innovation games to do that.
But also, I mean, depends on each company. I mean, every
Sure it
company
is.
has a different culture
You bet.
of acceptance or not accepting. I mean, do you do like a Big Bang Theory? You say, okay, here's.
Okay, let me, awesome conversation. I really, really hate to break that up,
Go ahead,
but
go ahead.
I'm not gonna finish as it is. But there's still a bunch of stuff that I want to mention. So we're in a really fortunate position. You guys familiar with the strength finders? Some of you? Okay. I'm Rackspace Cloud. It's another type of personality profile. It focuses on your strengths. There are 32 listed strengths. Rackspace buys into this idea of our badges actually have those strengths on them. I got the top 5. Everybody does. You get a name tag with your top 5 on them. Some people, you go to manager training, which teaches you how to manage 2 people's strengths. That they buy into this part. The reason I find this particularly advantageous at this point in time is that I can go through the lists and find individuals, and I can know what their strengths are. So I can actually do some kind of analysis on what is the personality profile of a successful facilitator. So now, I wasn't able to do a lot of that because I started discovering this towards the tail end. And because I'm getting this a lot by interviews and stuff like that right now. But I took some of our top 10 people that I knew, that at the very least someone had said, this is the person I go to when I have questions about strengths. So I took those 10. And now keep in mind that StrengthsFinders isn't quite as open and rigid as, say, like Myers-Briggs, because Myers-Briggs will actually give you where you are on the spectrum. StrengthsFinders has that information. They can't give it to you and still charge you for their product because then you can figure out. So that's why you get your top 5 and your top 10 and not, 1, 2, 3, as opposed to 1, 2, 3. So I don't have that data either. But just with what I had, I was able to take out of those 10, this is not a statistical sample, but 60% have learned. Just people who want to learn. Be the top attribute. Half of them have strategic. For those who aren't familiar with strategic, it's a way of thinking that causes you to seize lots of different options, lots of different paths, start evaluating them, like ROI kind of evaluations immediately based on whatever your values are, and picking them, whichever one gives you the best benefit. And it's just a way of thinking that is ingrained in you that you don't even know you're doing. Most people who have strategic don't realize it. That's how they think. Responsibility. They use a cute little logo because this is kind of a meme on it that says something. But it's basically if there's something that needs to be done, you really take ownership of that issue. And this speaks a lot, in my mind, to the ownership issue that we have earlier. Right? There's a difference between I like the games being productive. And I like the games. I need them. They will help me. Second person will run and facilitate the game. The first person would enjoy playing the game. Input is similar to learner in that you like to collect things. Sometimes it's just a collection, but usually it's collection of data. So whereas learner is more, I like to acquire skills, I like to acquire things like that. These are, I like to acquire data. I didn't get any more lower than that because I'm already starting to hit statistical insignificance at that point in time already, and I have a really small sample size. What's interesting to me here is not so much this particular profile, but the fact that it seems like we might be able to pick one out. So it may be possible that we could measure an actual profile, personality profile for a successful facilitator.
You say by mixing these together? Or by, because...
No, like, I'm talking about discovering a person, saying, I have taking the StrengthsFinders test and saying, well, ultimately, once you get the data, you can say, okay, I've got learner, strategic, and responsibility. Oh, you might make a good facilitator.
But, I guess the question is, you could have, if you have